Welcome back to the Substantiate podcast. We're back at it again. You've gotten the drill by now. Week 8 of season 3. We've got a few more Q&A episodes here that will be continuing on for the time being at least. And so basically today we're going to go with another Poddex topic, and this one is going to be discuss the history of your industry. And I think I've done this before in a past episode, more specific with sports podcasting, but here I'm just going to go podcasting in general. So I just pulled up the Wikipedia page and I'll go over interesting parts. So podcasting, which was previously known as audio blogging, apparently, sounds like vlogging almost, except audio, has its roots back dating to the 80s. Apparently, the internet comes out and portable digital audio becomes, a new thing with the iPod and being able to put music onto that with a digital file instead of a cassette tape. And so then podcasting began to, really become a thing in late 2004. So today there are more than, according to Wikipedia, 115,000 English language podcasts available on the internet. I know on Apple Podcasts alone, there are more than 2 million total. So I think Wikipedia's number is a little small, but I guess you'll just have to go with that for now. And yeah, so they all go through in weird ways. Anyway, so let's see. Here they're just talking about the history of, playing music and stuff. Alright, timeline. In September of 2000, the first system that enabled the selection of automatic downloading and storage of serial episodic audio content on PCs and portable devices was launched from early MP3 player manufacturer i2Go. So that's interesting. So the technology really started coming along in 2000. So that was September of 2000. And then the RSS feeds started becoming a thing in a month later in October of 2000, or at least that's when they were first proposed. And so you could attach sound and video files in an RSS feed, and basically that's still how podcasting works today. I have a podcast RSS feed, and I went through a process where I gave that feed to each directory: Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Google, all of those. They each have slightly different processes. And I upload it to a website that creates the RSS feed. And, then once you give it to them, they can take all the audio files, and that's how you're listening to this right now. So that really started to come along in 2000. So then it looks like it was first demonstrated, the RSS feed, in early January of 2001. And so it looked like it was in a lot of development for 2 to 3 years. But the first on-demand radio show and the first podcast in August of 2020, the New England Patriots of the NFL, there we go, there's some sports podcasting, launched the IP radio show. PFW in progress. It was a live show that was recorded and made available for on-demand download it to visitors of Patriots.com. So that's pretty cool that the first real podcast was a sports podcast. I wonder if that podcast still exists today. That'd be pretty interesting. Although at the same time, it's interesting because the Patriots then, and, they're Tom Brady starting to come on the scene then, but at the same time, who really wants to listen to that from 20 years ago? So, that's the great thing about having all these hypothetical sports matchups that I do, is they're relevant today, and they're going to continue to be relevant because, for the most part, we're not talking about current players, we're talking about some all-time players or other categories like Marvel characters, although those do get updated, obviously, but anyway, that's the main part of it. So, although this wasn't technically a podcast at the time, since the technology had not yet been invented to automatically download new episodes, uh, so that's the main difference. You couldn't automatically download it. Then in 2005, 2 years after the introduction of iTunes, there you go, the show was also offered there as a bona fide podcast. So it really was the first podcast. And then today it is still in existence under the name Patriots Unfiltered. There we go. And is available on all podcast platforms. However, this was not the first podcast. That honor goes to It Conversations by Doug Kay, the show that ran from 2003 to 2012. Okay, that was a really confusing paragraph on Wikipedia. So first it tells us that this show was really the first podcast style thing, and you can still find today, but it wasn't the first real podcast. So, alright, so the first podcast wasn't a sports podcast, but you know what, we're close enough. Maybe we'll go a little longer here, but in September 2003, Dave Winer created a special RSS feed with enclosures feed for his Harvard Berkman Center colleague, Christopher Lydon's web blog. So it was previously a text-only RSS feed, but now I guess they could put audio on. So that's pretty cool because, podcasts are audio. And it looks like from there it's really just evolved and, Joe Rogan started in like 2009, I think. And, in 2005, Apple adds podcasts to iTunes. And here's something. In July 2005, U.S. President George W. Bush became a podcaster of sorts when the White House website added an RSS 2.0 feed to the previously downloadable files of the president's weekly radio addresses. There you go. Also, okay, not too much else there. And so it's just grown and grown and grown, and eventually I showed up there. I think there's a stat that like 50% of American adults who listen to, I guess, at least one podcast a week, and then another 25% know what a podcast is. and only about a quarter of the US population has never heard of a podcast. So anyway, I hope you found that history of podcasting and sports podcasting interesting, and I'll see you back here next Wednesday for more Q&A.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Substantiate. The best way to help support the show is to, number one, tell your friends about Substantiate. That is the number one way to support us. The second way is to leave us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. Number 3, follow us at SubstantiatePod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Hello, I'm Anthony.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
And we're hosts of Capes on the Couch, the podcast where comics get counseling.
Superheroes don't always get to go home happy. That's where we come in.
We offer psychiatric and mental health analysis of comic book characters.
So check us out at capesonthecouch.live and across all social media platforms at Capes on the Couch.